Hello there, I'm Sue Romanoff, the head of healthcare content here at Edison Group. Today I have the distinct pleasure of speaking with Richard Godfrey from IRLAB. Hello, Richard.
Thank you, Sue. Nice to see you.
Great, nice to see you. So let's just kick off with a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, so the fourth quarter is going to be an exciting time for IRLAB. There's some with some top-line readouts from Phase II Mesdopetam in Parkinson's disease, levodopa-induced dyskinesia. Could you give us some details around the trial endpoints and what you consider to be a positive result, and maybe what a clinical meaningful result of the study would be?
Sure. Yes, thanks for the question. So this is probably the biggest milestone in the company's history, taking an agent from basically target discovery through drug discovery, early clinical development, and now closing out a Phase IIb study. It's 154 patients, randomized, placebo-controlled, evaluating 3 different dose levels. So it will also confirm the Phase III dose. Top-line data is anticipated around the end of the year. We gave some guidance in the Q3 results, actually, that the top-line data will quite simply be the number of hours of additional good on time at the expense of bad on time. And I can explain that in a moment if you like. But hours are important, but also the statistical significance or the relevance of that is also important. So I guess they'll have a P number associated with it. We'll probably give some guidance on safety because, of course, that really is the paramount objective in clinical development, to confirm the agent is safe as well as effective. But then we'll also confirm that a whole range of secondary endpoints will also be presented at a clinical or medical congress in the first half of next year. Yeah. The progression into Phase III and later stage development actually is going to be an executive decision by Ipsen. As you know, this asset was licensed to Ipsen 1.5 years ago. We're the sponsor of this Phase IIb study, and we've been managing it, and we'll close it out. We'll lock the database, clean it, and present the data. Ipsen will have the executive decision to move it forward, and we're working in close cohort with them to prepare for that, but there's no decision taken yet. Your second question is, what's a clinically meaningful endpoint? And we've done a lot of work here with KOLs, with patient groups, and regulators, of course. And also we've done quite a deep analysis of what other compounds are doing that are also addressing, improving the quality of life of Parkinson's patients. So levodopa-induced dyskinesias, okay, it's a complicated name. Right. Yeah, PD-LIDG is much snappier. Right. And what it really refers to is the fact that levodopa works quite well for a number of years for Parkinson's patients, right. But invariably you get this breakthrough dyskinesias and you get these involuntary movements that really detract from their quality of life. 1 additional hour of good quality muscle control would be quite significant for patients and would be quite significant for regulatory approval, we think. And many agents have offered 1 additional hour or even less and gain clinical approval. But there's one really important difference that we want to stress, and that is that Mesdopetam is specifically designed to inhibit D3, dopamine receptor 3. And that is the receptor that's responsible for these dyskinesias. So not only do we hope to improve the number of good on hours, the number of hours per day when the patients have good muscle control, but we also want to do that by reducing the bad on time when they have muscle movement, but it's dyskinetic and they don't know what's going on. Okay. So good on at the expense of bad on is a real win for patients. So 1 additional hour we think would be great. And I stress, in our first efficacy study, our Phase IIa study, we actually reported 2.8 hours of good on at the expense of bad on. So no guidance here as to what it would look like, but more than an hour would be a great result. And we're shooting for the stars. We think we could actually really add some great quality of life to patients.
Oh, that's really helpful. That was good clarification. Thank you for that. How about the second one? Maybe an update on patient enrollment and how it's progressing on the Pirepemat Phase IIb study in Parkinson's disease related to falls. Are the clinical timelines still on track for top-line readouts at the end of fiscal 23?
Yes, so the guidance again that we offered is that we're still sticking to that guidance, that we'll have top-line data at the end of next year. Now, the treatment period for the study is 12 weeks.
Yeah.
We've been recruiting for a while now. We're open in 5 countries across Europe, and there's a head of steam building in the recruitment, in the screening and the recruitment of patients. So we're still holding that guidance, and we'll update during the first half of next year if there's any change. But maybe I should just backtrack a little bit. Pirepemat is a unique compound, again, that we've discovered through our ISP discovery engine, specifically designed to help patients with what we think is the most troublesome symptom of Parkinson's disease: postural instability and frequent falls. This is when patients hurt themselves. This is when they can't trust themselves to go out, and their care levels get really distressed that they're going to fall over and hurt themselves. And lest we forget, if they fall over and hurt themselves, it could be very, very serious. But the cost to the healthcare system, we estimate, is about $30,000 per hospital admission. So it is a significant healthcare burden. So the ambition of this study is to reduce the falls frequency. And in doing so, we think we'd increase the quality of life of the patients. But a secondary benefit, not necessarily directly linked to that, linked to more neuropharmacology, is the fact that we also see a reduction in apathy in the patients, which is a well-documented non-motor symptom of Parkinson's disease. But what was really interesting is we saw an 80% reduction in caregiver stress. Again, not surprising. If you're caring for somebody who's got a disease, a sickness like Parkinson's disease, you're going to be scared to death that they fall over. If you see that their postural stability improves and they're falling less often, you're going to be less stressed. So there's a lot of wins here. So we're really optimistic that Pirepemat is going to be successful and it will improve the quality of life. And just a reminder again, Phase IIa study, first saw clinical signals. We saw a 35% improvement in postural stability and a 53% reduction in falls frequency. That makes a massive difference to patients' quality of life. So we'll see. I mean, it's a placebo-controlled, randomized study evaluating 2 doses. So we've got every opportunity in this study to really get a strong, compelling clinical signal that will direct us into a Phase III program, all being well.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for that. For the third one, in fiscal 23, I think it's shaping up to be another busy year. So you're planning for 2 new assets to enter the clinic in Phase I studies, IRL942 cognitive impairment and IRL757 apathy. Maybe provide an update on how this is developing.
Sure, yes. Well, IRLAB is really coming of age.
Right.
All of the research for the last decades that have formed into IRLAB and our ISP research and discovery engine is very, very productive. By all accounts, generating unique compounds with very strong patent protection that can really address some of these unmet medical needs in neuropsychiatric medicine. So cognitive decline, decision-making, psychosis, very, very severe neurological diseases, specifically in Parkinson's patients, but also in a much larger patient population. And 757 in apathy, well, really, that's a completely unaddressed market and very, very significant. It's a major, well-known, documented, untreated symptom of Parkinson's disease, and indeed many other neurological disorders as well. And so just coming back from BioEurope, there's a lot of interest in these programs because they are quite unique. In terms of the status, well, clinical candidates were nominated about a year ago. All the so-called IND enabling work is either completed or ongoing right now, such as the tox studies. CMC to GMP standards is underway, and there's no barriers there. So now we're reasonably confident that it's just a process. It's a well-trodden path, taking these out of this IND enabling work into regulatory submissions for IND, or as we call it in Europe, a clinical trial authorization, so that we can initiate Phase I studies next year. Phase I studies will be quite standard, single ascending dose studies, maybe toggling into multiple ascending dose studies thereafterwards. So relatively straightforward, primarily looking for safety and pharmacokinetics, ensuring that we understand how the drug can be taken by the patients and how it's distributed, metabolized, and excreted. So, yep, very exciting. This time next year, all being well, we'll have 3 clinical assets that we're progressing under our own head of steam, and so it really does propel IRLAB into another division, I think.
Right, right. No, that's great. Again, your preclinical pipeline is you're looking to nominate drug candidates from ongoing P003, that project. Could you provide more details on that program, and is it, I think it's still targeting Parkinson's treatment, and how it differentiates from what you're progressing on the candidate selection?
Sure, yes. So, I mean, the thing with Parkinson's disease, and when I first joined IRLAB and did some research in my own due diligence, you know, I was surprised that levodopa is still the mainstay. Now, levodopa was discovered in 1969, I think. When I was at university, it was the standard of care drug, and everyone was getting excited about sustained release formulas. And then over the last decades, they've been producing subcutaneous pumps and all sorts of new formulations. But to be honest, it's a good drug, but it's got lots and lots and lots of problems, and it doesn't solve the problem by any means. And there's been other attempts as well. But with the really, I'm saying genuinely, really profound and deep understanding of the neuropharmacology of the brain and the disease in particular within IRLAB, we've identified a whole new way of treating Parkinson's disease that is not levodopa based. I'm going to save the details for later, for not to give anything away, although our patent position is quite robust, and even as a point there, you know, you notice in Q3 we confirmed that we've issued some stock, which is a way of acquiring some specific know-how to really make the IP around the 003 program very robust. But this is a very, very unique way of finding a dopamine substitute, not levodopa, a dopamine substitute that we think will be a 1-a-day treatment for Parkinson's patients without the troublesome complications that the treatments have been plagued with for decades. So, you know, keeping our powder dry, looking forward to announcing the candidates and then giving more information around the end of the year and then into first quarter of next year. But it's very, very exciting and has great potential for being quite transformative for the way in which Parkinson's is treated.
Wow, that's great. Okay, maybe since now we've kind of gone through your pipeline, maybe it's a good time to give a recap to investors of what they should expect in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity to recap. Yes, so around the end of the year, top-line data from Mesdopetam. First half of next year, full data set from Mesdopetam. We'll bring 2 candidates into the clinic, 942, 757. We'll enter phase 1 next year, and we'll nominate a candidate for 003 by the end of the year and give details about the science behind that. So they're the things to look for. They're the inflection points that are on the horizon in the next 12 months. And then last but not least, of course, we still hope to have data for Pirepemat at the end of next year. So very, very busy 15 months ahead of us. Lots of news flow and lots of very exciting developments.
Great. So thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure to speak with you, Richard.